Welcome to Garden Delights. I'm Susan Howington, Family Consumer Science Agent with the Henry County Cooperative Extension, partnership with the University of Georgia Extension Service. Today we're going to be talking about apples, and we're also going to hear from Frank Hancock, our Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent, and he's going to talk a little bit more about gardening. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights. Welcome back to Garden Delights. Today we're going to be talking about apples, and it's one of my favorite fruits. I know that my husband will say it is one of his favorite fruits, especially when some other fruit's not in season. Apples are in season right now. You will see them in the grocery store. You may see a different variety in the grocery store. Or you may want to travel up to North Georgia and pick your own apples. So either way, pick an apple up. Let's talk about this apple because this is a Granny Smith apple. It is great for cooking. It has that tart, crispy taste. It's not as sweet as some other apples that you might like, but a Granny Smith is a really good cooking apple, so that's what I'm going to be using today. Apples are fat-free, saturated fat-free. They are cholesterol-free, and this medium apple is about 80 calories, give or take, 80 to 90 calories. It is a wonderful source of fiber. It is 20% of your daily intake off of one apple. So if you're looking for something for fiber in your diet, an apple is a great choice. Now, when you're storing those apples, you want to make sure that you're storing those in a good place. But let's talk about that selection. So when you're at the grocery store, you have a choice of a lot of apples, and so it just really depends on what you're looking for. So when you're selecting your apples, you do want to make sure you're looking over the apple, make sure you don't see any bruises, because you don't want to pay your money for an apple that has bruises on it. So look for the bruises, look for any nicks on it, any color that's not good, because you want a firm, nice looking apple when you're buying it for the selection part of it. And when you're buying those on the side of a farmer's market or a place that you're traveling, make sure you ask them if they can see the bottom of those apples, because if they're in a container, you want to make sure you can see the bottom of them, because you want to make sure they're not any of them bruised, they all look good, because you're buying that whole basket of apples. So make sure you're looking at every apple. Same way with the grocery store. Now when you're selecting those apples, they need to be firm, because when you bring them home from the grocery store and you're going to store them, you want to put them in a dark place, and you want to in a cool dark place, and you want to make sure that you put them in the refrigerator. Is what we really recommend for you to do. If you don't want to put them in the refrigerator, then you want to make sure you don't keep them out too long, because they're going to get mealy on you and they won't be as crunchy as you like an apple to be as far as the crunch part of it. So when you're selecting those apples, look at them thoroughly. Make sure you're going to select good apples, bring them home. You can put them in a bowl for a little bit, but if you're not going to eat them in the next couple of days, put them in those refrigerators so you can prolong the use of that apple, because you can always eat an apple when it's cold, and if you need to, set it out just for a little bit to get the chill off, but it's best if we can keep them in the refrigerator, because they are going to keep fresher that way. When we come back, we're going to hear from Frank Hancock, our Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent. He's going to talk more about gardening, and then we'll come back and do our apple and sausage pie that we're going to be making later. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights.
Okay, today we're going to talk a little bit about fall gardening. It's time, or right at past time for some vegetables, but we're going to talk about that. We'll let the truck go by before we start talking. And but before we start talking about our fall vegetable crop, talk a little bit about tomatoes. If you recall, in one of our previous episodes, we planted these tomatoes. They were very small. They've done well. We've gotten a lot of nice, big, juicy beefsteak, or not beefsteak, but they are beefsteak, but mortgage lifters is what these are. And they are an heirloom, and they've grown here all summer with very little disease, pressure, everything's done well. This time of the year, though, we start getting some pressure from leaf-footed bugs. I got a big battle going on with leaf-footed bugs, and of course the ladies in the office have picked all these tomatoes, so I don't have very many ripe ones to show you right this minute, but I will show you some leaf-footed bugs. We have a special problem with them here. They overwinter in weeds and tall grass and things, and on this hillside, this hill was too steep to cut with a lawnmower, and so we planted Cerisa lespedeza and love grass on it, so that gives a nice place for these bugs to raise and stay around. So when the tomatoes get pink and ready to start ripening, the leaf-footed bugs come and they're nymphs. And what they do, if I can get one right here, here's one right here that's it's not quite ready, but let me get it out of here. They pierce the tomato, and it starts to feel kind of like sandpaper where they've sat there, and the little red nymphs are also, they'll get on the leaves. And I got a little bit of splitting going on. I hadn't had any splitting all summer until the rains came recently, and these that are planted in the ground here, they get a good dose of rain, and so the tomato develops almost to the point of getting ripe, and then it rains and the hull on it gets tough, and then it tries to grow again. You get a little bit of splitting, and that's what that is. But just wanted you to see a little bit about what these bugs do. I come out here with some Pyganic and spray them every other day or so, but it's a battle right now, but that's a subject for another day. We'll talk to you about trap crops and how to control these things organically at another time. On your fall gardening, we're going to talk about planting. Fall slips up on us sometimes because some of these vegetables, what we would do to plant our fall garden is we would take the University of Georgia's garden calendar here, vegetable gardening in Georgia, and in it we have a list of what to plant when, and so that's a good thing to go by. You can grow almost anything you want to in the fall as long as you plan for it to get right before the first freezing weather that we have. So our first killing frost is going to happen around November the 17th, generally. And so what we would do is we would take, like a plant that takes 90 days to mature, 90 days from November the 17th is going to put you about August the 15th. So you got to be planting stuff in August, and so we've done some of this stuff in August, but you can run it right on up to September because a lot of your vegetables don't take that long to mature. That way you get a crop before the frost kills it. So you can grow squash if you start soon enough. You can grow tomatoes again if you start soon enough. So just be thinking about that. You still got to go through checking your pH, putting down the lime, the right amount of fertilizer, all of those things that enter into it. What we've got here is we have planted some collards in a bucket here. We got them going. We've got some beets growing here. We've got some carrots right here. And some of these I'm gonna have to thin out. I haven't done that yet. I'm letting them get a little bit tougher so they'll pull out without pulling all the rest of them out. And then we've got some turnips growing in this bucket right here. I've also got some turnips planted in a raised bed down here, as well as some spinach. Kale is in this bed in front of me. And like I say, you start these things early, and it was hot when we planted this kale and it didn't come up real well. So you'll see 2 or 3 pieces there that are a little bigger than the others because I had to replant it, which is not uncommon because August can sometimes be very hot. And so anyway, you get your book and you take a look at what you can plant when and get ahead of the curve. If you wait until fall, you're going to be too late on a lot of vegetables because they need to be planted in this September time frame that we're talking about here, at least. Some of the things like the kale and the spinach, they'll go right on through the winter. The the frost will knock them back a little bit, but they'll pop right back out in the spring, and you can have another batch. Spinach, when it gets warm, is going to bolt. It's going to go to seed. Once it goes to seed, it's finished for the year. You just pull it out and plant something else in its place in the springtime. So that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today, is get out there and get your fall garden in before it's too late, because like I say, fall gardening slips up on us sometimes, and we don't start operating until October somewhere where we think it's fall, and we don't have enough time for it to mature before the frost kills it. And a lot of times, if the frost is coming and you've got your plants where you can cover them up and protect them from frost, a lot of times when that November frost comes, if you protected them, sometimes you get 2 or 3 more weeks of warm weather after that first frost, and they can continue to grow. So it's not the end of the world when the frost comes, as long as you're prepared for it. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Get your garden planned. We got brochures. Come by and get a brochure from us, and keep on eating vegetables right on in through the winter. And now we're going to go inside and see what Susan is fixing.
Today we're going to be talking about apples, and we're going to be making an apple sausage pie. This is going to be a simple recipe, but a little bit more steps, but it's really, really tasty. First of all, let me just start off and tell you that I've already browned the sausage, and I have picked chicken, Italian sweet sausage, but you may prefer another type of sausage, so please, do that as far as a substitute in the recipe. But that's what I'm going to be using today, because I'm trying to keep the calories just a little bit lower. And what I'm going to do now is you're going to need about 2 medium Granny Smith apples. And so what I have these apples. They are in a lemon juice and water. And the reason why I have put the apples in a lemon juice and water, because once an apple is cut, and once it hits the air, it's going to start turning brown on you. So to keep that from happening, if you have some kind of acidity, and most people have lemon juice in their refrigerator, so if you will, just take a little bit of lemon juice, a little bit of water, and you soak your apples in that. And you really do not taste the taste of lemon juice. It just gives it all you're going to do is just give a little bit of keeping the apples from turning, and that's all you're going to be doing. So 2 medium Granny Smith apples, washed, just like we always talk about. You've got to wash your produce, and then you're going to take those 2 Granny Smith apples, you're going to peel them and make sure you have the core out of them. So that's what I've done so far. So I've got the apple slices into big pieces. So now my game plan is to cut these into thin slices, and then we're going to add this to our butter over here in the pan. Now, normally if you were doing this, you would have your sausage, you could drain your sausage, put it to another bowl, and then you're going to add your apples into it. So we're going to do one step ahead. And I am going to go ahead and get my skillet heated up just a little bit. I don't want to heat it up too much, or that means that my butter is going to burn, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to kind of start it off, and I'm just going to show you what I'm doing. All I'm doing is slicing them, and I do want you to slice them thin, because when you stir fry them, when we get ready to, you're going to see how fast they become very tender, and you'll be ready to go. So I'm just going to slice these up. My butter is melting slowly. Do another one. And apples also are very good in vitamin C. They also have some other nutrients and vitamins in it, but they also very good in vitamin C too. So if you're looking for a fruit that has a little bit of vitamin C, you can think about your apples. The recipe is going to tell you want to have a pie shell, and it can either be one that you make, your homemade, or it could be one that you store-bought. It doesn't matter. But it needs to be like a deep dish, like a 9-inch pie pan. And so you want to have that one already cooked, like it says in the container or the box that you get it out of. The dough, if you're going to roll it out yourself, you want to go ahead and cook your pie crust or whatever it tells you to do to have it ready to go. And I will show you toward the end of those steps on how to do that. So you'll want your pie crust ready to go, because once all these steps are done, you're going to put this all into a pie crust and kind of layer it. My apples are getting tender, and that's what you want. You want it to be a little tender because you're only going to bake this dish for about 35 to 40 minutes depending on your oven. And the apples are getting softer. So I'm going to let it sit here just for a second. And one good thing about this recipe too, I know I used a little bit of butter to it, just to the apples to give a little flavor. But once they cook down, you'll realize you don't really have a whole lot of liquid in the apples, because it'll cook down really, really well. And so when we add it to the pie shell for the other parts of the recipe, you'll see that it will have not very much liquid at all to it. I am going to tell you a little bit more about, let me go ahead and move my garlic over here and tell you a little bit more about the recipe. The sausage is, you want to make sure you've cooked it before you put it into the pie shell. So whatever you pick out and prefer as far as your sauces, make sure you have cooked it before you put it in the pie shell. That's very important. Now what I do have over here, and I'll just go ahead and talk about this and I'll come back and stir my apples. This is 2 eggs, and they're already beaten. We also have 1/4 of a cup of feta cheese. We also have a cup of ricotta cheese, and we have 2 cups of shredded provolone cheese. And what's going to happen is I'm going to mix the 3 cheeses in with the eggs. And once I mix those together, that's going to be my top part of my apple and sausage pie. So I'm going to stir this just a little bit. And to me, you could eat this any time of the day. It doesn't, just because you think of it's being a pie or like a quiche, it doesn't mean it has to be for breakfast. You could eat it any time of the day. And this might be a great way to, if your little ones like apples, it might be a great way, and they like cheese, to mix these together. And maybe you can get them to eat a little bit of their fruit for the day. These are getting softer. And before they get to the stage I want them, and usually what I'll do is I'll take half of an apple and I'll just kind of push my spoon down. And if it looks like it's getting ready to come apart, then I know they're getting soft enough for me to be able to make this apple and sausage pie. And they'll also get a little limp. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add, because they're getting pretty soft, and you'll see the change of the color of those apples too. They'll almost get to where, not you can see through them, but they'll get to where you can tell they're getting, they're cooking, that they're changing the texture, and that's going to be something you want to watch for. The last step, and this is your garlic, and like I said, this is 1 clove of minced garlic, and you're going to add it to it. So we're going to add it to it and keep stirring, because I want my garlic to mix in. Oh, if you could smell this, it smells really good. The garlic's just going to mix in with the apples, and I want to make sure that I've got it heating up really good before I go on to the next step. And I just want that aroma of the garlic to mix in with the apples. And you can see that was 2 apples. And when you cook apples, and I don't know if you ever made applesauce before, but once you start cooking apples, they start kind of getting smaller and smaller. So it's amazing how when you start cooking things, how they condense in their size. All right. This is about where I want it. And I think the apples are looking really good. And they have just a little brown to them. I've got everything looking good, so I'm going to cut this off. And this is still going to be hot. So I'm just going to keep it stirred just a little bit. And what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mix up the cheese and the egg mixture. I want to go ahead and do that because I want to be able to put the pie together once we have it all together. And I'm going to start with the mozzarella cheese first. I'm going to dump that in there. But I want to make sure I get every bit of that cheese. And then this is that 2 cups of provolone cheese shredded. This is 1 cup of ricotta cheese. And 1/4 of a cup of the feta cheese. And it's the crumbled up feta cheese. I'm going to use my spoon and see if I can stir it up just a little bit. First I'm going to come back, because this eye is still hot, I'm just going to come back and stir my apples just a little bit. But they're looking really good. And I'm going to mix this around. So I've already have my 2 eggs, they're already beaten up, and my goal is to just get this mixed up really good. So I'm just going to kind of fold it in. Get it all mixed up really good. And this is going to go on the top of the pie. So it kind of reminds me like scrambled eggs, you know, you got eggs and sausage and apples. But this is just a little different on the top part of it. So I just want to make sure that I get it really stirred up together. And you can see the ricotta cheese. Uh-oh, I just broke my spoon. I'm going to have to keep stirring though with this spoon. I just have a smaller spoon. Let's see if I can mix it just a little bit with this whisk. I want to make sure I get it off the whisk though. All right, that looks good. All right, so we have our egg mixture and cheese mixture all mixed together. And so the next thing we're going to be doing, so I'm going to tray it out and put some of this away so you can see how I'm going to put this together. I'm going to put this down below. And what I have now is the pie shell that I talked about earlier. I said you need a pie shell. And so it's already been pre-cooked like it said in the package, so I've already done that. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to add your sausage that you already have cooked. So that's going to be your bottom part of the pie. And you want to spread that out because you want to make sure everybody gets a slice that's going to have a little bit of sausage in it too. So that's going to be your bottom part. So I'm going to smooth that out. And then next, you're going to add your apple mixture on top of the sausage. And you can see the apples are very tender and they smell really, really good. So I'm going to smooth this over the top of it. And that's the apples, sugar, onions, and a little bit of garlic. All right, have that. So I'm just going to make sure this is evenly distributed around the sides of the pie shell, and I want to make sure they're in the middle a little bit because you want to make sure too you get a slice of apple. And you can see that was a lot of apples when I started chopping, but you can see it's not as many as you would think once I put this on. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to add the cheese mixture on top of this, and you need to have your oven preheated to 350. So make sure you have your oven heated up to 350, and you're going to end up cooking this around 35 to 40 minutes depending on your oven and how it cooks. And the key to making sure it's done is you may want to insert a knife into, put this over here, into the middle of it, and if it comes out clean, then that means you are good to go as far as eating your apple and sausage pie. So as you can see, this spreads really easy over the pie, just like this, and you want to make sure that you get it all the way to the edge, and you want to make sure it covers the apples. So it smooths really easy over. So I want to make sure I have it over all of it. And then I want to make sure it's even out too. If I see a little bit of apples, I want to make sure I spread it evenly. And that looks good to me. I want to just move just a little bit over to that side. And that's your sausage, that's your apples and your cheese. So that's your apple and sausage pie. So what you'll do is you will take this pie, put it into your oven at 350, cook it for 30 to 40 minutes, and it just depends on your time. I always try to check it after 30 minutes, depending on my oven too. So just 30 minutes, check it. May have to go a bit longer. Like I said, insert the knife in the middle. If it comes out clean, you know your pie is ready to go. And we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden of Lights, and Frank and I will be tasting this apple and sausage pie. Welcome back to Garden of Lights. I have Frank with us, and we're going to be tasting the apple and sausage pie. So Frank,
Apple and I wondered what that was.
You were wondering,
it
weren't
pretty
you?
good. Apple and sausage pie.
yes, and it's going to be yummy. Yummy. You want a big piece?
Yeah, big. Yeah, yeah.
That's what
yeah,
I
yeah.
figured.
You know, you can't sample something with a little piece.
That's right. You got to have enough, and I hope you like cheese because this has got, well, I think I can do it this way, Frank. Let's try this. It's got a lot of good cheese in it. Now, if my pie doesn't fall apart and I get this
It
out
looks like
looking
it's
good.
doing pretty good to me.
All right, you have a pretty good piece there.
Apple and sausage.
And you know, I was talking about apples earlier, but about 3 apples make about a pound. So if people are looking for apples and they're trying to figure out what they need is for how many pounds to make applesauce or whatever, it's about 3 apples make 1 pound.
You know, that's really good.
Well, I am excited that you think it's good.
John Chapman would be proud of you. You know who John Chapman
I
is.
don't know who that is, Frank.
Some people know him as Johnny Appleseed.
Oh, I see who you're
They
talking
went
about.
around and planted all the apple trees up there in Ohio and Pennsylvania. They were growing them to make cider, though maybe we should do that one show.
We
Make
should.
some apple cider.
I love apple cider, especially this time of year. This is really, really tasty. Check out the website for the recipe. Apples make it a little sweet to it. Cheese is really nice together. Texture-wise, as you see, it comes out really nice out of that pie shell. Put it in the refrigerator, have it the next day.
I never thought about having sausage with my apples.
There you go. You're getting your fruit in for the day. We'll see you back. Frank and I will see you back next time on Garden of Lights.